From Glitch HQ on Riverside Avenue in odd, even Minneapolis, this is Nice Games Club, the show where Nice Game Devs talk gaming and game development.
I'm Martha McGarry, and I make nice games.
I'm Stephen McGregor, and I make nice games.
And I'm Arthur Croy, I too make nice games. For this week's episode, our topics are fan bases and game design balance. So, if everyone's ready, let's start.
What are you doing? Oh.
You got it. There you go.
Okay,
Nice.
sorry.
Last minute adjustment to your headphone volume there.
Yes. Which leads right into our first meta topic about sound, because BGM Con is happening right now, which is the video game music convention here in town.
Yes, it used to be Gamers Rhapsody, but they changed their name a couple of years ago, I think, something like that. And my brother is there showing off Hyperdot, which I will always remember as anti-piracy, and he corrects me every time I say anti-piracy. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to go, because I have to go pick him up after this show. So that'll be something.
So you'll hear all about it.
Yes.
And then we can tell our listeners in the next episode how it went.
How it all went down. Yes.
Yeah, VGM Con was one of the local festivals we have here. We have a couple now.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's cool because they have a lot of famous video game music groups.
Yeah.
Like people who I know that OC Remix has a pretty strong following there. At least a decent sized one. And then but we'll link to their website. So you can check it out for yourself. Maybe you'll check it out next year.
Yeah, and it has a specialty, which is sort of makes it unique. That it's really about video game music, and like that, makes it a little nichier, but it also is a real nice focus for the people who are into that.
Yeah.
We've talked about music on the show before, and how I don't have a lot of familiarity with video game soundtracks, but a lot of people grew up with that, you did, Stephen.
Yeah.
And so it's a cool thing that there isn't something like it in many other places.
Yeah, it's very true. And also, there's something that new this year that I hope they continue to next year is that they have jam sessions. I guess they've always had jam rooms where people can come and just play whatever the heck they want with other people. But they have organized ones now where somebody will lead it and get people to just jam together, which is really neat.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a pretty solid part of the con. So hopefully it'll come back next year too. Yeah. I'll have to make sure to check it out. This year we're just recording an episode, so we couldn't make it.
GDC is also coming up.
Yes.
So when this episode goes out, it'll be very, very shortly. I think I'm going. I don't know yet.
Okay.
I have to get my act together.
Are we gonna record you from there again like last time?
Oh, that's a super good idea. We should do that.
Yeah.
The live meeting happening now. No, that was really fun last year because I know coming back from the show and then remembering all that you did and saw is kind of difficult. But Thursday night or whenever we did it last year was all fresh. So maybe we'll do that again.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I like that.
There's going to be some news coming, I suppose. We could talk a little bit about that. Sure. And the one thing that keeps coming up because it's made its way into mainstream press and tech press, not just gaming press, is that Google's going to be there and they're going to have a keynote. They're going to reveal some streaming technology that they've been working on. It's very similar to what PlayStation Now does, where it's, there's a server farm of gaming PCs and then you play it through your browser. And they've been testing this. They tested it earlier, late last year. With the latest Assassin's Creed game. If you beta tested their service, you just got to play that game, which was kind of a nice draw to get users. And so I don't know, they will probably announce something related to that. That's the thing. But there are rumors that there may be hardware, additional things. Even for a company as big as Google, that's kind of tricky. But remember when Microsoft wasn't a gaming company? It made no sense then either. So
Google comes to your home.
It could happen.
I guess Google's already in your home.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, Google's on your TV now. Maybe. We'll see.
I think it's interesting. We have a lot of times industries, as they consolidate, end up with two players, right? Gaming is unique that we have three in the console space.
Yeah.
And Nintendo is this weird outlier. They have so much money saved up from so many years that they can survive the Wii U years and the GameCube years and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hey, GameCube was cool.
Didn't do well.
Hey, I love the Wii U.
I know.
It has some of the best games ever made in history on that system.
Agreed.
But I think it's interesting that these industries can generally not support more than two big players.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're already a little bit past saturation in terms of like what the market naturally supports. So even Google would have a hard time, I think.
Yeah.
You know, people have tried to launch new consoles, every so often. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are from smaller companies who are biting off more than they can chew. But like, I don't think it's any hard or any easier for a bigger company to make that same attempt. So I don't take a lot of stock in these rumors because I think Google knows this.
Yeah.
And like, they're going to play to their strengths, which is like streaming and cloud services.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of fun to like wish there was like another piece of hardware or something.
I'd call it the Google Globe, and it'd be spherical.
Oh my god!
Then we make it unique from all the other consoles.
You guys, every time there's a new console like generation coming up, you see all the renders that people make of like, this is what I think the Xbox 12 will look like, or whatever, or the Xbox 720, or stuff like that, and they're all gross. They're all ugly. So, I mean, sorry, but.
I just whenever I think of a new console that like hasn't been released or whatever, I think of that episode of Drake and Josh where he had the Game Sphere. I'll have to link to that. It's really funny because he's just like, it's spherical, spherical, and it's the best. Yes.
I really just want new controllers. I love controllers, and so that's what I want.
Yeah. I would like a new controller too.
Not that I love all the existing controllers. I just want more of them. Like they're fun.
They're good. Hey, and more options are good too.
Yeah.
I would like more options because I'm not satisfied with the Xbox One controllers right now.
Yeah.
And everybody's moved on from 360 ones, so.
Wait, you like the 360 ones better than the Xbox One
I think
controllers?
I do.
Same.
I don't like the D-pads are terrible, but like,
yeah,
I like the way that the Xbox 360 controllers felt.
Same.
In the Xbox One, yeah.
I don't understand you two.
I don't know. I don't have a good explanation of it. Maybe I'm just used to it.
Well, I mean, it's the reigning champ of PC controllers.
Yeah.
It was the first controller to be standardized on PC. So like, it's what most people have known for most of their gaming lives. So like a plurality of it anyway.
Yeah.
So familiarity perhaps.
Yeah.
Also, it was good. I mean, it just, I don't think it's in any way better than the modern ones.
I don't necessarily think it's like dramatically better.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't like the Xbox One ones as much for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't like the balance of the Xbox One ones or something. It's something about how it fits in your hands that just is a little bit off. It's like fine, but like Xbox 360 is better. So.
Yeah.
But it's probably just because it's the thing I use at home. So
sure.
That's how I feel about it too.
Although you can get really cool colors in Xbox One. So I might get an Xbox One just because I want
customize
a purple one.
That seems like a totally legit reason.
Oh yeah, totally. Definitely.
So maybe that will happen. Probably not.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. I'll report back.
Okay.
And there isn't. I mean, I've been looking for lots of news that that hinting at GDC stuff, but it's been swallowed up by these Google rumors. So like, there's not much else that like people are anticipating, at least that I could find or think of. So,
do you think there's going to be a bigger group of people looking for unionization like there was last year?
I hope so. I think there's certainly been a lot more stories about that. Yeah. So I think that last year it was an activism effort, and this year I think hopefully it'll be an organizing effort.
Yeah,
and there'll actually be some movement on it.
Yeah.
And because last year it really felt like this is great, but like in its current form, I can't see what comes of it. Right. But that's required for something later to come of it. So hopefully as an industry, we're getting past that hump.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I hope it happens soon because honestly, AAA development scares me a lot because of all of those things.
Yeah.
People getting overworked like Rockstar and such, and people losing their jobs because the companies want to make more money, I guess, even though they've had their best year ever. That kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So like, I hope that something comes of it.
Yeah. In a previous episode, we talked about the impending Activision layoffs. They have since happened, and they didn't hit developers; they hit marketing people. But like at the same time, they actually made so much money that it would just seemed like a union at that company would have protected a lot of those people. Right. And it was just to say that companies can't like decide how many employees they want, but those employees would then have the protections of like severance pays and things like things that I'm sure some of them did okay or whatever, but like a lot of that is not just about keeping your job; it's about managing your the how companies treat employees at all stages of employment.
Yeah, exactly. At the very least, they would have known ahead of time. They would have gotten notification on it, and they could have prepared.
Yeah,
and that just didn't happen. Even though there had been rumors, I guess, going on in Activision about those kinds of things. There was no concrete evidence or anything like that people, I'm sure some people prepared for it, but like it's hard to prepare for something you don't know is going to happen for sure.
There was some debate online about the morality, the ethics of breaking that news before the employees are able to be told about it. Kotaku's Jason Schreier, I think, responded to say that is something they think about a lot.
Yeah,
that like it's valuable information and it has public relevancy, but also that can also be damaging to the people who the news affects.
Yeah,
in a way that is not anticipated. And so there isn't like a right answer to that because its newsworthiness probably outweighs those concerns, but those are real concerns.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know how I would feel like if I was getting laid off, but or I wasn't sure whether or not I was getting laid off, and it was reported about it a week before it actually happened.
Yeah,
I think I would be kind of annoyed about that. To be honest.
I would be annoyed at the company that they knew a week before they told me. You know what I mean? Like if they knew, they should tell the people, and therefore the journalism people actually did a good job because they're giving a heads up that the company should be giving. So
that is a fair point.
I have been laid off, and I don't remember the moment I was told mattering at all. Like it sucked. So
that's true.
I don't remember how much I worked after that. Like, was it like a week or two after before they actually, stopped sending a paycheck, or was it like 4 days? I don't remember those things because like that was sort of irrelevant. Like,
yeah, I guess.
Nothing makes it better.
And if you tell people beforehand, and if they are like disgruntled or whatever, they could wreck stuff.
Yeah. Right. Which, I mean, that's a concern employers have, but like, I don't care. Like,
that's true.
Really, the real reason for these kinds of notices is so that people can plan their next career move.
Yeah.
And like, I've lived a freelance lifestyle. So like, I didn't feel too bad. I didn't need to find a new job. I could just start getting clients again. But I think for a lot of people, who have a sort of more traditional career path, like that becomes this incredible deadline that's just screaming up at them. It's like, I need to find a new job now. And the more time you have to prep for that, the better. And I think the company's interests are not, maybe there's legitimacy to that, but like, it's like way low on the list of things that matter. So yeah, here's hoping that there's more push and more discussion. I know that there's going to be panels and off-site gatherings and stuff like that. But yeah, let's see if more happens.
Cool. In other news, Mark is famous now.
Oh yes, we're in the presence of internet fame here.
I guess I'll tell the story. So yeah, I'm like 7th year internet famous. Martha, you didn't know about this until like just a minute ago.
Yes,
which is great. So I was up working on Widget Satchel at like 3 a.m, as a do, and I sort of burned out and I took a break and I was looking on Twitter or something, and then I just saw this thing someone posted about a Kickstarter project. It's sort of a joking project, and that it was to digitally erase the rat at the end of the movie The Departed.
Okay,
so Martin Scorsese movie from like 13 years ago. Have you guys seen this movie?
I didn't even know it existed.
It's like it's the one that got Martin Scorsese an Oscar, but everyone was like, "Oh, that was just an Oscar they gave him because we didn't give him one for other things." I don't like the Martin Scorsese movie that much, but I kind of thought that was okay.
Okay,
it's not a great movie, but like it's fun. And it's like a Boston mobster thing. It's a remake of a Hong Kong film, and it's all about finding the rat in an organization. Right. So at the end of the movie, as like the final guy is, killed, and then it pans up and it's all sad.
Yeah.
It pans up to a shot of like the Massachusetts State's house. It's all about corruption and stuff. And then you see an actual rat walk across the screen. And so like the thing is like, it's a pretty heavy handed metaphor, which I remember thinking like fits the tone of that movie perfectly.
Okay. Yeah.
But this Kickstarter was like, say like it ruins this movie. So we need to digitally erase it. We have the technology, we can do it. And they laid out like basically like a sketch basically. And they laid out a plan like, I want $4,000 to do this, and this is what I'm going to spend the money on. And it was every bit was comedy.
Yeah.
I saw this, and my reaction was, this is the worst thing ever. It's like the potato salad Kickstarter. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Because I liked the joke. Like the joke is pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I didn't want people paying for it. Like I don't like that that's what happens. And like I think a lot of our audience can empathize. Like we're independent artists. Like it's when someone just has like a silly meme idea and then it gets flooded with Kickstarter money.
Yeah.
Like you feel sort of sour about that. Like it's not fair maybe, but like I remember thinking like, oh, this is the worst. Like I was so upset about it. And also I'm a motion graphics artist. So I'm a digital compositor. Like I know that this will take 2 hours and cost nothing.
Yeah.
As a joke, if someone paid me to do it for their movie, I would charge them my rate. But like as a gag, like you shouldn't be. Anyway. So I did it. I immediately opened up After Effects and I immediately got to work. And at like 5 a.m, I was done.
Yeah.
And I posted it on Vimeo. And then I just replied to a couple of tweets talking about it, saying like, I did it for free. Please don't give money to this nonsense. And so the Kickstarter got a lot of, attention, as these things often do.
Right.
And something like, a third or half the articles that talk about it also talk about my response to it. So I got quoted in Gizmodo and Time Magazine, and I think there was like a Boston Globe article, because of course Boston Press is going to be over it. And so I felt pretty good about getting to rain on this parade a little bit.
Yeah.
Of course, as it stands now, you can check for yourself by looking it up. It's like it's surpassed its goal by a fair amount, because all viral Kickstarters do, right?
Yeah.
And there's like a month left. So what's going to happen is it's going to make another bunch of money near the end of its campaign. So I failed in my goal, but I did get 7th tier internet famous as well. So by the time you hear this, it's probably faded into the memory of the internet. But it's exactly how I should have gotten 7th tier internet famous, because it's like totally, it's very on brand for me. So to be like mad about a thing like that and then spend time doing the work. So that's what happened.
Well, now you're famous.
Yeah, we'll put a link to the Gizmodo article, because I got contacted by the writer to give a response, so I got to actually sort of say my piece, which was really nice. But I don't know, it was very silly and it was very fun.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's on my gravestone, I'll have a problem. But
so now that you're famous, perhaps you'll have some fans.
One could hope.
And they'll start cosplaying as Mark with their hat and...
Yes, please.
Can some contingent of people show up in like little hats at the next GlitchCon, please? Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to talk about fan bases and fandoms, because I was thinking about it going to PodCon, because I went because, like, one, to learn some stuff, but mostly it was because I was a McElroy fan and I wanted to see them and meet them and be with all the other McElroy fans there. And
there were a lot.
And there were a lot of them. Like, everywhere you went, you heard someone like talking about them behind you or in front of you or whatever.
Yeah, speaking of a brand, you encountered many alternate Marthas, right?
Yes. Oh my God. You think you're a unique person, and then you go to a McElroy concert or a McElroy thing, and you see all the people who look exactly like you, and people will accidentally mistake you for other people, and it's weird. I mean, that hasn't happened to me, but it almost happened. Didn't you say that you saw a bunch of people who were like,
yep.
Oh.
Short hair, purple fleece jacket.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, nope.
So yeah, everyone's not as unique as you think, which is part of being a fan.
Yeah, you have a clan. That's something.
Yeah. So I looked up the word fandom. Turns out, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, it's been a word since 1903 at least, but back then it only was relevant to sports fans, because there wasn't very much else to be a fandom of, like books maybe. Classical music concerts.
Yeah, I suppose.
Right, I guess in that time, like a sports event was about the only type of public gathering that had the kind of like rousing sort of energy that we associate with all types of events these days.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure some historian person will be like, no, in fact, there were many literary, blah, blah, blah. There's been a lot of stuff in the news lately of like developer and fan interactions, and like what responsibility do we as developers have to fans, and what responsibility do fans have to developers, and like the etiquette around all of that. And like there isn't really a clear like playbook for how does one be a good fan, and how does one deal with fans in a way.
Yeah, well, and the boundary lines have gotten like blurred even more as of late because, you know, we have Twitch, we have Twitter, we have all the social media and other things. People can more easily access you, and developers are more easily able to access fans. Mm-hmm. So like there's a much stronger conversation between the two. And and oftentimes it's like confusing as to like how much you should interact with fans, how much fans should, you know, influence you in what you're trying to develop. Like maybe your fans are like, hey, put this thing, make it red. But you're like, but blue is better. I don't know.
Right, but then is that going to impact sales, and do you know, cater to the whims of your audience? And like, yeah, you say there's that barrier is dissolving. Mm-hmm. And but part of it is like an artifice, right? Like in order to gain a fan base, you need to appear accessible and responsive.
Right.
But at the same time, you're never, and this is not like putting anybody down, but it has to be this way. You can never be as responsive as you appear to be.
Yeah.
And because you can't explain why you're going to take their criticism measured against your own expertise and, you know, such and such. Mm-hmm. But so you just have to give the impression that like we listen to our fans, and so there's a lot of opportunity for misconstruing behaviors on both of those sides.
Right, exactly. It's it's a difficult dance too, I guess. Just to balance that, just to figure that out. Mm-hmm. Because not only that, but like developers need boundaries because they have to work on the game. They can't constantly be talking to you about stuff. So they need some time to like, you know, actually work on the game and not just the stuff that the fans want you to work on too. Mm-hmm. So
that's why a lot of like the sort of celebrity developers in the wider indie game community mm-hmm. are people who are advocates, speakers, and like small company founders who now manage their companies mm-hmm. rather than day-to-day work on their games.
Yeah,
and that's just because those are the people who have the time and the ability and the skills to engage with audiences.
Yeah,
but it sort of hides how games are really made a little bit.
Yeah, and it also makes sense for their brand too in
mm-hmm.
that way.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like Ooblets and how they focused so much on the social media part at the beginning, and everyone was following them, and then like they backed off a little bit on that because it was cutting into their like actual like the things they needed to develop to make the game actually happen. So, mm-hmm. So yeah, it's like a delicate balance between that, and then also like how do we tell like fans can get very unrealistic expectations, and like how do you make sure like the whole No Man's Sky thing where it was a person who wasn't like I don't think he was actually the guy who
Sean Murray,
thank you. Sean Murray like made all these promises that all the devs were like, that's not happening. But
he was the lead dev on that thing.
Really?
And it was Sony basically making all the implying all of the. But you know that confusion is part of the story.
Yeah.
Right? Of like who said what and who meant what and who misled who, you know what I mean? It's not, you know, there are arguments about that stuff.
Yeah, so journalism and how it's reported too can influence stuff as well. One thing that I really like that Polygon's been doing is like doing a lot more behind the scenes sort of things. Like this is how this developer designed, mm-hmm. you know, this particular mechanic in Monster Hunter or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And going into the in-depth, like at least design things, not code things, but design things. And I think, you know, if people did that more, you could have more realistic expectations of like what could actually go into a game, like,
mm-hmm.
and how much you're asking as a fan when you say, let's put multiplayer in this. Oh
yeah. Yes. Yeah, I have experience in that now. Don't just ask people to do online multiplayer without knowing what you're talking about. I mean, that the thing is though, is that like as a fan, you're really invested in this game and you like want things from it, but like you're also not a developer in the game. So like, even if you like develop things on your own, sometimes you still don't necessarily have an idea on like the scope at which it takes to build some of the things that they want to implement in the game. And so it's hard as a fan to even like understand what kind of work can go into it. So like as a fan, I can understand why you would be like, oh, you know, just flip the switch and it's got multiplayer in it, right? That's all you need to do. Because you wouldn't necessarily know any better, or maybe you heard wrong information or something like that. But like but you just really want to be able to play online with your friends or something. So like, I can see why you would.
Right. You're like, this is what me, an expert on what I like about this game, and what people like about this game.
Yeah.
This is what I think is the next step for it naturally.
Right.
And if it's not the vision of the development team, then it starts to feel, because you are sort of kind of taught to expect some ownership a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is definitely true of people who are like heavy boosters and organizers for the fandoms.
Yeah.
Right. People who like run Reddit groups and people who like organize events or like get a hashtag trending. Like they feel that ownership. And in fact, they are like concretely beneficial to the game and the community, but that doesn't give them any authority over the direction of it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they're in that situation, feel that they're owed that a little bit. But there's not even a social contract to govern that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it can be kind of fraught.
Yeah.
And that's true of like people who are, hardcore fans versus casual fans too. Like those, the conflicts can happen at that level too.
Right. Yeah. It's a complicated topic. As all of our topics are.
So have you interacted with fandoms or with creators, and what has worked for you and not? Like, I thought very hard about what I was going to say when I met the McElroys, so that I could appear as a normal person who wasn't obsessed, but not be too normal to fade into the background. And I think that's what I did instead, but that's better than being a weirdo. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
At the end of PodCon, they did, I think, is that public, the things that they did? The listen to this podcast when?
That's an actual feed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll link to that. But they did one at the end of the con that was, listen to this podcast when you just met Justin McElroy and you said something embarrassing. So have you had any interactions with creators, and how did they go?
I have had interactions with creator. I mean, I met Reggie. Did I talk about that?
I was going to say that.
Reggie. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We didn't talk about Reggie's retiring. Oh, that's sad.
Except?
Oh, but Bowser's taking over. Yeah, Doug Bowser's taking the place of Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that for 20 minutes, but I feel like the moment of that joke has probably passed well.
Oh, yeah. It's 2-week-old information at this point.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. I mean, Reggie looks like an eternal demigod. Like, I don't know how old he is, but he's retiring. He seems young, but like, I don't actually know how old he seems.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, in person, he's got such a, like, I know, right? I met him. He has such a commanding force. Like, everybody shut up as soon as he entered the room. Mm-hmm. It was wow.
You know what's extra great about that? It's like he's not going to be meeting a lot of fans going forward.
Yeah.
So you got in under the wire, buddy.
It feels good. But so I mean, when that happened, I just shut up and I listened to him. What I was trying to do is I was trying to be respectful of his time. It is not to say that like Reggie is more important than me as a person, but I mean, he does have a business to run. So as Steven Business, I can respect that. So I was trying to be respectful of his time and his presence in the moment, and I think that like that's important. Just because like I like you were saying, Martha, I think that like if you like go hog wild at and be like crazy fan or whatever, then like you will appear like a crazy fan. And you don't want to do that because it'll like it'll creep people out and stuff.
Yeah,
and you want to have nice interactions with people you're fans of, right? So
yeah, I think I mean, it's exciting to meet someone you love, like in that way. And like I've had various interactions with certain famous people over the years. When I was doing college radio, I interviewed a lot of people who were my heroes. I interviewed Billy Corgan, and Smash Pumpkins was my favorite band in high school. And
high school, you did that?
No, in high school they were my favorite band.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I matured a little bit, but I still love that band.
Sure.
These days, not as much. But I loved that. And I loved that I was in a position to be in proximity to the things that I appreciated.
Yeah.
But I think over time, I think that if you have a couple of these, this is like anything that you sort of get a proper stock of. once you've had your third sort of like random like C-list or even A-list celebrity encounter, you suddenly realize it's just not that big a deal, right? And so your excitement has to be placed somewhere else. Like you say, you have to respect that person's time. Like, what does it add to the fabric of your life that you had a 3-minute conversation that is about nothing? Do you know what I mean? Like, just to check off a box. But like, so now, like these days, like if I'm, when I go to an event and there's like a meet and greet afterward, if I don't really have anything like that makes sense. It's like they say at conventions, like go up and ask a question if you think the question would be interesting if somebody else asked it. Yeah. So I use that same standard, and it's like, like otherwise I'm just happy to be in a room, I guess, with that person. Yeah. Like that's good enough for me now. And I don't know. I think a lot of people. It's not an uncommon thing. I think most people have the capacity to get over themselves. Yeah, I think. Yeah. But sometimes I do wonder. Like sometimes I'm kind of just sort of Gollum around the experience, and like I feel like it's no big deal. But then later I'm like, should I have made a big deal out of that? I don't know.
I mean, I guess I kind of like the way you're approaching it, frankly, because like it is like a big deal in that like you get to meet somebody who you're a fan of, but like it's not such a big deal that like it will change the course of your life or anything like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so like you should approach it in that way. Like you should be like, oh, this is a cool thing. But not like, oh, this is the most amazing thing I will ever experience ever in my life.
And now we'll be best friends.
Yeah. Or that, right. Or I'm peaking here and it's just downhill or something. Don't do that. Yeah. I think you have a good attitude about approaching it. And I think that's like a very good way of looking at it.
Yeah. And I think the sort of common cliche of people feeling they get really nervous around someone they like. Yeah. I think that's just an extension of what I've been talking about. Like, I think everybody has that attitude when it comes down to it. Yeah. As much as we all fear that we won't be able to keep it together, which means we all care about keeping it together. Yeah. So I don't think it's that unique.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's almost the experience is kind of similar to like, I don't know, interacting with somebody you're attracted to or something like that. And that like you may like in your mind you're like, oh man, I really want to have a relationship with this person. Oh, I hope this goes well, blah, blah, blah. But like you should temper your expectations. So that like
and let Reggie get back to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly that. Yeah, just temper your expectations. I think is an important way of, as a fan, meeting someone you're a fan of.
Yeah, and like expressions of fandom, I think that have more value, especially as the more you're part of a culture of fandom, the more rich it can become and the more avenues you can express it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of things you can do as a fan just with other fans, like, editing wikis, participating or going to fan panels at conventions and stuff, going to meetups, doing cosplay of the characters of the games, making fan art and videos and fan fiction and podcasts and et cetera about your fan thing. And one other cool thing that I think is so cool that happens is like some fandoms end up having their own like little mini vocabulary. Like I keep bringing up the McElroys, but that's what's on my mind right now. Like the way they talk on the podcast is sometimes pretty unusual. And so like if you like get the same cadence of talking as them, like you can tell if someone's watched, like especially in the video game world, if someone's watched the McElroy videos, you can tell because they use like some of the same things. And then like there's the podcast that we're fans of, The Greatest Generation, about Star Trek, and there's little things you can say to other fans so that they know that you watched that or you listen to the show. It's like, are you a friend of DeSoto? And
best boss I ever had.
Which I think like linguistically is so cool because it like creates these little, like you can mark yourself, and you can do that with like merch and stuff, like pins or like shirts and stuff, and then you can like have an interaction with another person who likes the same thing, and that's like a starting off point for a conversation. Yeah. So
that's a good point. I think that like, being a fan of something allows you to connect with somebody else in that way. Yeah. That is, that's really cool. That you can't really do if you're not a fan of things. Who's not a fan of anything?
There's two sides of it though, because a lot of times I will like a thing but then I can't be a fan of it because I'm outside the gates of fandom.
Oh,
and I'm
sure.
not interested in what's on the other side necessarily.
Yes.
And that can be extremely frustrating because you want to like something, you want to talk to people about it, but then they have this different love for it that like you are not on board with, and there's just not enough of you to like build a separate sort of like, interpretation of it or something.
You're like, that's not what I like about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And like you can totally feel like you're a fan of something, but not feel like you're connected to the community because like they like certain things about it that you are not as much of a fan of or something like that.
Right. And it's not that you disagree exactly. It's just you don't have the same fervency about the sort of zeitgeist of it.
Yeah. Right.
This is true of like a lot of like the TV show Sherlock has like things that when you hear of like that fandom and you know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I'm thinking of, that you could it actually starts keeping people away
who
would otherwise appreciate it. It's not even as like less than, but enough. It's like it's as much. It's just in a different way. It's not in the sort of prescribed canonical fanon way.
Yeah.
It's like speaking of British based fandoms, like the Doctor Who fandom. I cannot with them because it's like I think I've told this story on the podcast before, maybe, but we used to get like VHS tapes of OG Doctor Who, like back from the day, and I like tried to get my friends to watch it, and they're all like, "No, that's like an old show, like whatever." And then the new one came up, and they were like, "Did you see this show, Doctor Who?" And I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
So that's mostly why. Because I'm
you were there first.
Yes, I was there first.
There
except
before
I
it was
wasn't
cool.
because I was there after it was cool originally,
right?
But before it was cool again.
Right. So in that period, it was totally uncool.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. I think that like being it's weird because like you could totally be a fan of something, but just not like the fan base, and it makes you feel like you shouldn't be liking this thing as much. Because I mean, there's an association with gamers in general now that is troubling.
Right, game fans with a Z or whatever.
Right,
that kind of, and it's a slur in a sense. It's like it's an exaggeration of what the culture is, but like it's not that far off.
Yeah, and so like as a person who likes games and enjoys playing them, I want to divorce myself from that like identity that like that I play games.
The gamers,
that kind of thing. But like also, I play games a ton, and like I enjoy that, and I enjoy interacting with people who play games a ton. So like, it's a strange conflict of interest for me.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people too, with that kind of an issue. I mean, and I think like I'm sure that other people who listen to us could probably agree with this too, in that like. You might not necessarily identify as like someone who plays a ton of games, but like you like games and you enjoy interacting with people who like games. But you want to keep away from like the bad side of that stuff.
Yeah. And it's not even that, but it's also just the detail, like the facts of the matter. Like you're a super huge fan of Smash Brothers.
Yes.
Like it's like your favorite game series.
Yes.
But you're not a fan of Melee.
No,
like you just don't like it as much. But like that is the sort of pinnacle. Even fans who don't like it's not their favorite. There's like that has this sort of like basis that the fandom revolves around. Of the closer you get to the gooey center of it.
Yeah,
and so I'm sure that feels weird sometimes because it's like you can't have those conversations necessarily.
Yeah, totally. Because like sometimes I'll say, "Oh yeah, I love Super Smash Brothers," and they'll be like, "Oh man, did you see U2 King fight?" Hungry Box or whatever. I don't watch Melee. And I'll be like, no, because I'm more of a
because Melee sucks.
I'm more of a Smash Ultimate person.
I don't want to get letters, guys.
I mean, I wasn't saying my opinion. I was just repeating what I've heard before.
From Steven.
Yes.
Send your letters to Steven.
Great.
No, don't. That would be a bad fan interaction. Nice Games Club fans.
Yep.
Yeah, send it to the feedback form instead. But yes, I have a hard time interacting sometimes with like other Super Smash Brothers fans because Melee is such a force in our community.
Yeah.
In that like, and I like all but don't pay attention to it at all really. So like I sometimes I'm like I don't really want to talk about Melee. I don't even want to watch it because it's I don't find it very exciting to watch anymore. Yeah, so I definitely feel that.
Yeah. And then Martha, your McElroy fandom, you're like all in. Like you are, like you were saying, you're of the type of the McElroy fan, so it must feel very comfortable.
Sometimes, because there are a certain subset of McElroy fans who I do not identify with. Most of the ones who are exclusive or like more Adventure Zone fans than they are of just general McElroy things.
Because there are spheres of fandom now.
Yes, because their media empire spans many. And I just can't identify with some of the people, like people who are like heavily into cosplay. Like I don't do that very much. Like I tried once back when I was a huge Miyazaki fan, and I didn't finish my costume, and it just was a lot of work. And I was like, I don't really want to do this. So like, there's a huge subset of fans that do that, and so I'm just like not part of that thing. But I do like meeting McElroy fans on the street, being like, oh hey. Like I went to buy the Adventure Zone graphic novel at the store, and they were like, "Oh, hey, you're a Mabim Bam fan?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Just saying Mabim Bam.
Yes.
Most of the time, nobody knows what that means. Unless you listen to it.
I feel like the lyrical quality of saying that acronym is got to be worth like 15% of the popularity of that program.
Yeah,
it's like, how could you not like it? At least 15%.
Yeah. Yes, and we can find a good balance with fan interactions and expectations.
Yes, just as you have to find a good balance in your game design. But don't just.
Expert work, colleagues.
Yeah, I want to talk about game design balance because it is currently my favorite topic to talk about in game design. I love it a lot. And frankly, like, it's kind of the reason why I started getting into games or making games again. Because when I was in college, I played League of Legends. Speaking
of fandoms.
Right.
Oh, boy.
Well, yeah, they were always pretty wild.
We'll do a follow-up for toxic fandoms later.
Yeah. But I really like how the developers, the designers specifically, would like interact with fans and talk about why they made the decisions they did for this and why they, nerfed a thing or buffed a thing or whatever else.
It's like the Overwatch updates.
Yeah.
With Jeff or whatever.
Yeah. And so I really like those interactions, and I really like them going over all of that stuff and the thought process behind it and stuff. And I just found that super fascinating. And so I was like, man, I should maybe do this for myself. Then I started working on Vengeance, and 4 years later, it's not out. But there's lots of things to balance. Exactly. And I love it. Actually, one of the, I don't know if I should talk about that. Well, one of the things we're working on at work, one of my coworkers is working on a thing, and it has a lot of numbers and stuff. And I'm like kind of constantly prodding him, going, "Hey, can I look at your numbers?"
Hey, buddy, what's your number?
How those numbers looking?
I got my own numbers. You want to see? Just share our numbers.
So I love this topic. So what is the importance of balance? Why do you want your game to be balanced, and what the heck is balance? Really, I mean, game design balance is like, making sure that like a player, when they're playing your game, is challenged but doesn't feel like it's impossible. It just like the game feels fair for everyone to play.
And to be clear, you're talking about balance in a really broad sense. So not really just about balance between competitors.
Yeah.
You mean like balance of like all the mechanics. So this applies to single player games.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So like, for example, if you're playing a game and like there's a loot system, and like if you just grab certain loot and then you can defeat everything, that's poor balance, because like then it trivializes the rest of the game once you get this thing. Unless that's the point of that object, then it's like a whole. And you got to think that through and realize why you're doing that.
There's a game I've been recently playing a lot of Crashlands by Butterscotch Shenanigans, who are in St. Louis, Midwest. Woo.
They also have a development podcast.
Oh,
we can link to in the show notes.
Listen to that. Yeah, and the game is basically like loot and crafting and survival and stuff like that. And their balance is so good, because the minute you're feeling overpowered and like, oh man, I found everything that I need to find, and then you find a recipe for another thing that has a whole ton of other craft, like another station that has more things to craft.
Yeah.
And like you find another enemy that's too hard for the current weapons that you have, and you have to go further and further out. And yeah, it just like, I've been obsessed with playing it lately, because it just, the minute I get bored, something else gets introduced, and it's very good.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I think I like that kind of stuff is important, because like you should constantly feel like you're playing a game and not like everything is just trivialized as soon as you get this thing, because that just feels bad. Then it just feels like you're wasting your time playing this game after you beat it. You have, like, effectively beat it before you even got to the end. At least that's how I feel. And I think also it's important that game design balance, because like it allows players to trust your design. So like if you break the balance in some way, the players will understand why this is happening and why like you broke it. Like with this item thing, if you give somebody a super powerful weapon, they'll understand that, they gave me this because like I did all of this work to get to this point, and I'm like 95% of the way done with this thing. I can trivialize the rest of the thing because I worked really hard for it, or something like that. Mm-hmm. It helps the players, understand your thought process behind the design and trust you as a developer. And I think that's very important. But it's interesting because like there's a huge difference between like single player and multiplayer game design. And I think that like multiplayer game design has a lot of what single player game design needs. But I want to talk about like how single player, like you want to make sure that like your players feel powerful and stuff. So like you'll tweak the numbers such that like they'll deal 5 and your enemies deal 2. So they feel powerful because like, you're dealing 2.5 times as much damage. But you still want to make it challenging. So maybe you'll put more of those enemies around to balance it out.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things are things you need to think about. But you also don't want to make it so that like it's boring. You need to make sure that like the balance you have for your game makes sense for the audience you're looking for your game too.
And the tone you want to go. It's like you don't necessarily need to balance it so like 50-50 the player versus the AI.
Yes.
You need to balance it for like how you want the player to feel. Do you want the player to feel powerful?
Yes.
In a superhero game, you want the player to be a little bit overmatched, or, overmatch the opponents.
Yeah.
But in a survival horror game, you want the opposite.
Right.
At least you want the feeling of that.
Yes.
Like, you may want your survival horror game to actually not be that difficult, but feel difficult.
Yeah.
So this is all. It's not just about like how many hit points versus how much shields you've got.
Yes. Yeah. You definitely need to think about that. And what you want the players to feel. That's a very important point. And horror games in particular are interesting in that respect, but I don't want to.
Horror games are not interesting. We all agree.
I respect horror games, but do not like them. That is my feeling.
You're not a fan.
Not a fan. Exactly. But that kind of balance of stuff is important and something you want to consider while you're developing the game.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of horror games with balance, they just re-released Resident Evil 2?
Yeah.
And there's this like giant zombie guy apparently who follows you around in one level. Okay. And a lot of the videos I've watched on it, they have noted that seems very unbalanced because the minute he finds you, he catches you, but it's very easy to get away from him. So it just becomes an annoyance rather than like an actual challenge.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's an example of tweaking the numbers. Maybe that would make it a little bit more, it would make it less annoying and more like an engagement sort of thing for players.
I think there's you can speak to this.
Yeah.
There's like, I always have difficulty when people talk about tweaking the numbers.
Yes.
Because to me, it's like, it seems almost beside the point. Like an example like that Resident Evil, I don't know the game, so that I might be just not interpreting it correctly. But like, if you tweak like how frequently it catches up to you versus what the chance is that it will get you if it finds you, like that's all fine. But I think the problem, I don't think that solves the problem exactly. I think it's a design issue.
Oh no, it totally
like designing
is
a scenario.
Issue. Yeah.
And then the numbers almost seem like a secondary concern.
I think that the numbers are a part of that.
Yeah.
Like the numbers are supposed to support your design for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like I don't know what numbers they use to tweak this thing, but like it sounds like the encounter just happened too frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they wanted this character to be an imposing force, so they decided that like they should show up frequently so the player is constantly aware of it. But maybe because it's so easy to get away from from whatever the creature is, it made it so that it felt more like you said, it felt more like an annoyance than an actual issue, something you have to face and deal with. I think that like I wish I knew more about like how the development of that worked in that game in particular. But like I feel like they could have merged the design and the mechanics of the games better so that it felt more like a constant imposing force, but not an annoyance.
There's a really great set of articles and videos about alien isolation.
Oh yeah,
you do this exact same concept where it is when you actually peel back the curtain, it's amazing how much rubber banding is in that game. Or like when you escape from the alien, like the AI of the alien always knows where you are.
Yeah.
But it doesn't know exactly where you are. So the alien is always coming into the room you're in. Mm-hmm. Like, and so even if you like reasonably, like from a real world perspective, are able to like get, lose its tail and like get rid of it.
Yeah.
It will always know where you are, but it doesn't know exactly. So it always feels like it can find you.
Yeah.
But then the AI, the sort of like inside the room has no idea. It just knows to look for you. So if you escape the room, it will still keep looking in that room until it gives up. Then it will go back to knowing what room you're in. And so it's utterly artificial, right? But it gives that feeling. And I think that's I imagine that's a similar system for any mechanic like this.
Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of speaks to my point is that like, it's all artifice. So like numbers really implies like an exactitude that I think is a little bit too aspirational, I think, for what game design really is.
To be fair, I do approach this in a way that like, I'm like, oh, numbers, I can change them like that. But I do agree that like there's no perfect equation to get this thing to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Right.
But because the world is fuzzy.
Yes.
It is important to set your goals so that whatever tweaks you do, you can evaluate do they reach your goals rather than do they reach perfection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
7 of 9.
I just like, I wish I had a better understanding of like analyzing the numbers, but I like to use the numbers as a method to help figure out what it is I want from this thing and help figure out what I should change in order to get it to work.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of discussions that I saw on like the Riot forums and stuff that I really enjoyed. I really liked them having a back and forth between developers and players and like and them explaining why it is that they came to this decision. And they didn't always use numbers and stuff to determine those things, but they did oftentimes talk about like the win rates of a certain champion or whatever in League of Legends. Mm-hmm. And that would help determine whether or not this character needed more power or less power or such.
Yeah. In multiplayer, that data analysis can be really important.
Yes.
For that kind of stuff.
Yes. It's something very different from single player. It's important to make sure that there is a balance, but like you also, make sure that the player feels like they're in a world and feels like they're the way they're supposed to feel. Yeah. But in multiplayer, competitive games specifically, you want to make sure that like both players have an approximately even opportunity to compete against one another, even if they're using different characters. And there's no possible way to get that to be perfect because every character is different, and so they'll have innate advantages or disadvantages against another character. But like this is where like perfect imbalance comes into play. There's a video from Extra Credits that talks about this that maybe we'll link to in the show notes. But like it's basically trying to get it so that all of your characters have strong enough of a role. They feel different from one another, unique and special, but they also are balanced in a way so that like one character can competently compete against another character, and not to the point where you don't want to make it to the point where like as soon as somebody picks this character, a player playing this character is going to automatically lose.
Bayonetta!
Right. In Smash 4. Because like that, I mean, that feels terrible because like you might as well not be playing the game at that point. But you also don't want to make it so that they're literally playing the same game like the original Street Fighter, or the same character like the original Street Fighter. Yeah. Because, I mean, players having the same like control scheme and character, quote, quote, is okay because like, there's Tetris 99. That's a thing that everybody competes with. And I think they spawn with the same pieces and such. I don't know that to be fair, but like they're all playing Tetris.
Right. They're evenly matched. Right. Yes, this is like games like chess.
Yeah.
Like, chess is famously feels incredibly balanced, but both players have they start with the same thing. There's no meta to chess. Yeah. In that sense.
Right.
And like, I'm attracted to games like that. So, but like Smash is a great example of something where like control, I mean, even though the control scheme for the players have the same like, basic inputs,
right?
How you play is so incredibly different. And I think more than any other game, they find a way to make that feel balanced.
Yeah.
And, they put out numbers to sort of prove that, yes, Peach isn't overpowered or whatever. But it's depending on your play style, you engage with that totally differently. And that gives it a real sort of a richness and a lot of detail.
Yeah. And what I really love about Super Smash Bros. Specifically, and why this it's perfect for me as a thing, is that the way that they make the characters is in most cases. I don't know if this is the case for all of the characters, but they oftentimes will just take the games that these characters are from and use their abilities in that game to enforce what role they play in Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
And I just love that. Bayonetta, for example, in the actual Bayonetta game, she combos people with constantly, and they can't get out of the combos and stuff. But you have to be careful and defensive before you can get to that point where you can destroy whatever creature you're trying to kill. And in Super Smash Brothers, she's the same way. She has very strong combos, but she has to be careful about how she approaches it, because otherwise she won't be able to get in, and then she'll get defeated.
So each atomic encounter in Smash can be wildly imbalanced.
Right.
But then, which is why when you play Smash, it feels like a party game. Because a lot of times it doesn't feel like you're evenly matched moment to moment.
Yeah.
But then in the aggregate, it's balanced, which is also why it makes a good tournament game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
One downside of competitive games that keep going and keep changing balance wise is that if you're a casual player, this is why my boyfriend Dylan plays mostly bots when he plays or against bots when he's playing League of Legends, because he has to constantly because he only plays once a month or whatever. When he's I'll go play League of Legends, and all the champions will be changed.
Yeah.
And so I used to play this one, and now I my play style is totally doesn't work with this character anymore. So you have to constantly learning. And he's it's way more fun to just play that against bots. But he hates when characters get changed.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of PC games in particular will do this, where they're they'll have a character and it's not a very popular character, and they have a low win rate and blah blah blah, and they'll revamp the character so that they'll have a better fit in the competitive scene. But players who used to play that character, they'll look. That character will be completely different now, and so they won't want to play that character anymore.
Yeah.
And that happens. That happened in Overwatch too, right?
Yeah.
There was that one woman who Symmetra, yeah, she had the shields or whatever. I don't play that game. There's a lot of games I don't play. But they changed how she worked so that the competitive scene would use her in more teams. I think it ended up being the case where they still don't use her in stuff, but that alienated her original fan base because they really liked how she used to play. And those are kinds of things that you should consider, I suppose. I think in fighting games in particular, most of the time they just add new characters. They won't completely revamp characters, except in between iterations. So it doesn't seem like it's as much of a concern on console games, but it is something to be annoyed about.
Well, I think that that insular quality of those multiplayer games is that balance, as you keep up with the balance and the meta and all of that, that is just relating to your topic, Martha. It can keep you out of a fandom.
Yeah.
If you I love this game, but I only play it twice a month, which is probably a lot for any one game, but still isn't enough for me to really be able to play this game.
Yeah.
I know it's kept me from games like Overwatch and from MOBAs. I like a lot of those mechanics, but I cannot devote time to understanding it.
Yeah.
And then it's not fun to get wrecked.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Then you just stop playing it.
Right, yeah. That's why I stopped playing League of Legends. I used to be really into it, but I had more time back then, and now I do not have the time to constantly invest in trying to figure out what character is good for this or whatever.
Yeah.
So I just stopped playing.
As a side topic, matchmaking is another element of balancing systems.
That's true.
Maybe it's a stretch to stay on the topic, but it could be we could talk about in the future. It's a lot of developers probably are very nervous about their audience is becoming calcified and unable to accept new people. But then all of a sudden you have to maintain your audience, so you have to keep it going, and it's that just further moves you away from growth.
Yeah, I could speak to that a little bit. Because we have a matchmaking system in Treasure Stack.
Yeah,
we have a ranked game system. But the way you rank up is pretty simple. If you
Treasure Stack out now.
Yes, it is out now.
Buy it.
I
saw. This is a side topic, but yeah, I saw it on the Switch store. And wish listed it.
Thank you. Oh, that's sweet. But we the way that you rank up in Treasure Stack is pretty simple. You just have to win 3 games in a row. Mm-hmm. No, actually, no, just 3 games. You just have to win 3 games, and then you'll go up a tier or whatever else. And we try to match you with similar tiered players, but like,
is it win ratios, like, or is it just raw wins?
It's literally just if you win 3 games and you don't lose 3 games in a row.
Oh, okay,
that will rank you down if you lose 3 games in a row.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like, it's actually it's a different metric for going up versus going down.
Yes,
that's interesting.
Yeah, the balance should be so that like players will generally go up because it doesn't feel good to go down.
Oh, right, because this is exposed to the player, or is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, players will see all this stuff and see where their rankings are.
Right.
But like we tried to balance it in such a way that like we wanted players of similar rank to play against one another because we figured that like they would have similar amounts of wins. But at a certain point, it also feels like if you just play the game enough, you'll just rank up enough points so that like it kind of doesn't matter whether or not like or how many wins you have. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the case with a lot of matchmaking things. Is that like at a certain point, it just feels like it's really the time invested that makes you score higher, and less so like how good you actually are at the game. And that doesn't feel good. Yeah, I suppose that's like a side topic sort of thing.
No, I mean it's all part of it. Like that, like when the difference between multiplayer and single player, it's like this philosophies of balance in all things. Mm-hmm. And like you say, you have this ranking system that is exposed to the player. So that's separate. It's almost a separate system from like matchmaking ranking. But because they share a system, you need to balance between the goals of those systems as well. So it's an extra challenge.
Yes.
It's all a holistic experience, right?
Yeah. Everything is connected.
Yeah.
I do want to bring up a little bit cooperative games because I'm working on Fingens, and I think that it's important, like when you're making a cooperative game, to make sure that every player, when they're playing a game, they feel like they can they have a role in the team and they feel like they are making an impact in the game, in some way, even if it's not necessarily like the optimal way. Like with Fingens, the way we've built all of the characters is that like even if you're just playing for yourself, or even if you're just playing for yourself, you'll still like contribute to the team by even playing selfishly, because like that kind of thing you're doing will help. Like dealing a bunch of damage to enemies will destroy that enemy, so other players don't have to deal with that enemy and such. Mm-hmm. So those are the kinds of things like when you're developing a game to consider a cooperative game.
Right, you're balancing between like how each of the characters feel, and the different weapons and stuff, but also how different play styles work together.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is that like with cooperative games, they don't necessarily have to be equal in balance either. Mm-hmm. I think it's less important in a cooperative game to have characters of similar strength.
Yeah.
Because
like think Sonic and Tails. Like it's still a pretty fun 2-player game, even though those characters are wildly unbalanced from each other.
Tails is way better because Tails can fly, but
and can't die.
Yes, exactly. But like that game is still fun. I guess it's because Tails can't complete levels.
Right.
So
it's still Sonic's show.
Yeah. But like it's not as important as long as everybody feels like they're contributing, and they're feeling good. I think it's you should maybe approach single player or cooperative game balance kind of similar to single player balance, in that like you want to make sure that all your players feel what it is you want them to feel. Yep. Mm-hmm. Do you have balance examples in the games we're developing?
Well, I know that in Widget Satchel, I built you a tool to analyze the collectibles in each level.
Yes.
And you've been distributing them to balance the progression of the player.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that thing is so useful. I felt like half the time I was doing it was counting all of the widgets in the game.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to like start over because like I miscounted or something, and that tool is so helpful. Thank goodness I have that.
Well, we can talk a little bit about like that's an example, but there's also tools you make to be able to audit how well you're doing by your own standards.
Yeah.
Right. That's the problem we had in Widget Satchel. It's like we want to have like this many here, but like you have to just literally count on screen how many there are.
Yeah.
And so we built the tool to do that, and so just make the like less friction for that work.
Yeah, totally. And with other games too, they have a bunch of tools and metrics and graphs and such to like that will help them determine whether or not like this thing is really good or not. I like in Metro Nexus that there's a bunch of graphs and stuff that like you can look at to see how well you did in the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're planning on using that for any balancing purposes, but
so in Metro Nexus, at the end of each match, you get these 2-dimensional charts and all these different metrics that show how the players did, and it's a user facing feature, right? Yeah. You see your kill death ratio, you see how many points you had over time, you see the moment that you lost that third life, and then you're like, oh, it all turned bad for me there, or it was a great comeback, and it's really fun for user story stuff. And that's its main purpose. Sure. But I'm also storing the data for analytics.
Oh, okay.
But I haven't done any real actual analysis of that yet.
Okay.
But that's always been the plan.
Yeah.
But my tools aren't robust enough to be able to analyze that data, frankly.
Sure. Well, you can also like with that, you can determine how long players are playing on like a particular stage.
Yeah.
Maybe like players are playing too long on this one. It takes 20 minutes for them to finish a level where it normally takes 10. Yeah. And you'd be like, oh, well, maybe we should do something about this and tweak it before the game comes out or something.
Right. And because in Metro Nexus, all the players are equal mechanically, and that's an important part of that design, I need to look at in my balance issues in case of like, oh, when a player is doing well, do then they become a runaway success?
Yeah.
And that's a thing I can then tweak a little bit so that all players can get, nerfed at a point or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like you're saying, like how, because the matches in Metro Nexus.
Blue Cell.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
The matches in Metro Nexus are not timed. They have conditions for completion. So yeah, how long is a match? 2 players, 3 players, 4 players, and what's the expectation of a player? When I pick up to play the game and I played it with my friend and I love it, but now I have my other friend over and it's the 3 of us playing, how different is it going to feel?
Yeah.
And is it going to feel the same,
Right.
And how well am I one-on-one versus, and are those feeling differences beneficial to the game? Do they enrich the experience or do they distract from the core experience?
Yeah.
Like it's tough to know that stuff. And so that's why I would love to analyze this data, but I have not.
Yeah. But I mean, you have access to it now. So
yes.
like you can analyze it when you want, which is good.
Balance can also help you find bugs in your game. Like, for example, in Clawbreaker, we were noticing that in all the demos we did, like the green crab was winning more.
Oh, yeah.
And we figured out that's because there was a like slight difference in the 2 different sprite sheets that made it so that the hitbox was slightly off on the green crab. So it was way harder to hit the arms. And so I had to go through and like perfectly pixel match each one, which was difficult because like we didn't like during the jam, because it started as a jam game, like Lizzie just had to draw really quickly. Like she had like 3 hours to get these crabs done. Right. So she like just drew them however. And so like they didn't exactly line up. And so, yeah, that was a long time, but now it should be good. We hope.
Let us know the game is out. If Green Crab is winning too much, maybe you should play better. No, just kidding.
There's a fun example recently of balance that I did on a multiplayer game. So I'm teaching this game design course at Venture Academy here in Minneapolis. This is after school program once a week for a bunch of middle school and high school kids, and they're all brats and they're really hard on me. But I'm explaining the concepts of game design and you want to make a weapon more powerful. That's going to make you feel better, but then it's going to make the game feel worse. And trying to teach them about those sort of ideas and like the difference between like literal mechanics and like the end game feel and stuff like that.
The juice.
Yeah. And it's getting through to them finally, which is nice because it's taken a little while. But I think I'm getting better at it. Okay. And the example I want to talk about is I had them do some paper prototyping. Ooh. And I just wanted them to come up with a concept for a game. So just come up with a concept and like a basic idea of like what the win condition is. Like you can't ask too much from someone who's just really introduced this idea.
Sure, yeah.
And then next week we'll come up with some rules for it and play it, and then we'll do some iteration.
Yeah.
And the idea that stuck with the group was something they called Zombie City. Okay. It was a game they came up with where there's a zombie in the middle of the board and then 4 players that have little like outposts around. And then that was kind of all they had. They're like, and then like you go out and you either attack the zombie or you collect things or something and the zombie has to get you. Yeah. And then maybe there's a second zombie. I don't know. It was a very simple idea. And so the next week we turned it into an actual live game. We played it in the room.
Ooh.
We simplified it. We had 2 bases of human characters and 1 zombie. And we came up with rules about how many those carpet squares were tiled, so we had like squares. It was really fantastic. Cool. And so we kept trying to balance it for like we played it like 6 times, and we changed the rules each time.
Sure.
And we tried to make it balanced. And then at a certain point, somebody said like, it's like the humans are too powerful now. I think I should be scared of the zombies. And so we came to the like, I'm sort of easing them in this direction of like, how should it feel, right? I made sure it started out wildly imbalanced, so they would have like, somewhere to go with it.
Yeah.
But they recognized very quickly that even though it's a multiplayer game, there's the zombie team, because once you kill someone, they become a zombie too, and the human teams. Like the zombies should feel like they win most of the time. And so it was really fun to have that discussion. It was really about the balance.
Yeah.
It was about like, well, the zombie should move slow because zombies move slow.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, because there's two human teams, the zombie will never be able to catch up with either of them. So we needed to change that. So now they're fast moving zombies. So the theme got tweaked so that zombies felt more like a threat.
Yeah.
Like that they would feel even in a movie with slow moving zombies.
Yeah.
So like it was a really fun exercise.
Cool.
And I really invite anybody to like, when they're coming up with their game design, to looking for like balance issues like that, to like really start very small about like really, really simple things and iterate quickly on a tiny idea. Because it can be much more revealing than you expect it to. Like you really think you want to add a lot of like the draft versions of a lot of concepts.
Yeah.
But the smaller you start, the more you can identify what is creating an imbalance.
Yes.
And the levers to pull and the directions to go to change it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can get really way too complicated.
Design unit test.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
I totally agree with like starting out with a very small idea and building onto that.
Yeah.
But I would also argue that like when you're making tweaks to a thing, and you think like this thing is too powerful, I found success in just like halving or doubling random values to see what changes and what makes it better or worse. Because you'll get a much better understanding of how this value will affect your game.
Yeah.
If you make a drastic change to it instead of like 5% change here or 2%.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. You want to overshoot your target and then pull back.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I just try that. Cool.
But it's an important thing. Like you don't make your whole game and then balance it.
Yes.
Like, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, continually work on balance, but don't leave it till the end.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Speaking of the end.
You're going to transition to our ending story.
I mean, it was there.
Yeah, it was.
That's our show. If you haven't already, subscribe to Nice Games Club in your favorite podcast app, and be sure to give it a good review if you liked it, or a nice like us. We need to know you're out there, so leave a review and tell all your friends too. That's on Apple Podcasts, that's on Spotify. We never really get detailed about this, but I think we should really be hammering home, people, review this program. It's how more listeners find us.
Yes.
It means we can devote more time and give you better content.
Maybe you can finally access Mark. He's famous now.
If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear directly from you. So follow us on Twitter and all the other things at Nice Games Club. And you can email us at contact@nicegames.club. Lastly, you can find out more about the show and your nice host, as well as get all the links and show notes from this and other episodes at nicegames.club. And so, until we start again, remember to
play nice
and make nice.